Hello and welcome to the Tennessee Informer. Thank you all for joining us tonight. Originally scheduled to be our guest tonight was Vanessa Miller. She was going to inform us about some serious concerns she had about a particular nonprofit organization in McMinnville known as ISHA. Unfortunately, due to unforeseen circumstances, Vanessa could not be with us tonight, so we rescheduled her for Monday, September 8th. Now that's going to be an extremely important show, so we don't want you to miss it. Make sure you tune back in on the 8th. We're really looking forward to having her back. In lieu of that, I decided that I would be talking about the 2026 governor's race. Not just about the current candidates in the GOP primary, but what the voters should look for in a candidate, especially if they want a governor that will actually follow the Tennessee and U.S. Constitution, not to mention representing the people and not the big donor class, as is usually the case. As for the candidates, discussion will only focus on the GOP candidates, since even the Dems in Tennessee are as far left as any in the country and have nothing to offer decent people that believe in the Constitution and the rule of law. But don't worry, this won't just be an hour-long Dave rave. The good news is Representative Monty Fritts from District 32 has agreed to be our special guest tonight. Monty has seen how bad things really are in our state government, and is going to be pointing out issues and individuals within our state government that work to undermine our rights, as well as irresponsibly manage our hard-earned tax dollars. He has some ideas about what kind of person we need to have to be our next governor and what it means for our state government as a whole to operate for the good of the citizens in accordance with the Constitution. Monty will join us in just a minute. But first, a new segment we're calling the Informer Report. Immediately prior to Marsha Blackburn officially entering the race, the Beacon Center conducted a poll claiming that Marsha Blackburn led John Rose by over 50 points. It seems a little fishy that they would take a poll on somebody not yet in the race to begin with, and what do you know, the very next day she enters the race and is leading by a huge margin. Now, I realize that even though Rose has been in the campaign for a few months now, and he doesn't have near as much name recognition as Marsha, who has been in politics for about 30 years, over 20 of that in D.C., but I'm still suspicious of the reported gap in popularity because I know a lot of people in Tennessee are still mad about her backstabbing Trump on January 6, 2021. No, we have not forgotten. I suspect that margin is much like her promise of future bold leadership, mostly BS. That goes well with her initials, MB. Governor Lee announced that the Tennessee National Guard will assist ICE with rounding up illegal aliens. No numbers of how many will be involved yet. Glad to hear it, especially since legislation sponsored by Representative Fritts and signed into law authorized the governor to send up to 2,500 to Texas last year to stop the invasion, yet he didn't send any. Wonder how many have come to Tennessee since that law was passed. Trump is now cleaning up D.C. He's having the homeless moved out and housed somewhere out of the city. He told the criminals not to worry about housing. They would be arrested and put in jail where they belong. This is way, way overdue. And oh, by the way, before you think this is overreach, D.C. is controlled by the federal government, okay? This is not like D.C. coming in and taking over Nashville or something like that. And matter of fact, I think it is Section 740 that he referenced earlier today in a press conference. That's the D.C. charter that allows the president to take control of federal law enforcement, all law enforcement in D.C. So Governor Lee needs to look at using existing laws to deal with crime and homelessness in Memphis and Nashville, and probably some other places as well. Gaza, starvation, and genocide. That's what we keep hearing. But consider that since early on, we know the UN and other agencies have given inflated casualty reports. The latest charge of starvation is also suspect, and in fact, the New York Times had to recently retract the story showing a starving child when further investigation showed the child had a long-term genetic disorder. When it issued a retraction, when the Times issued a retraction, Hamas supporters vandalized the New York Times office in Manhattan. No truth allowed, I guess. For those who think everything is a Jewish plot and believe the worst about Israel, you still might want better sources than the UN and various Hamas supporters. And whatever you think about Israel or Jews doesn't make Hamas good or Islam good, and they are not our friend. That would be true even if we stopped any kind of aid to Israel. For the record, I oppose giving tax dollars to any foreign country. That includes countries like Israel and others that we give money that they have to spend on weapons and equipment from American defense contractors. That's doubly wrong in my book, tax dollars to another country for the purpose of corporate welfare. Now to our guest, Representative Monty Fritts. Monty, thanks for joining us tonight. Monty?
Hey, Dave. How are you doing tonight? It's good to be with you again.
Well, I appreciate you coming on, especially on such short notice. I think you had a busy day today, didn't you?
It was a busy day. We're getting back from some travel, and that means getting the grass cut at the business and here at home. And we had a little thing out in Lenore City I'd promised to be at tonight, so I was running a little bit late getting ready for the show. But it's good to be with you. Look forward to talk about this topic. This is something that's been on my mind a lot lately. I've given some thought to, if I were going to apply for the job of governor of the state of Tennessee, what would my priorities be? And I think that's what we're going to kind of talk through tonight.
Absolutely. Before we get to that, can I just get, what are your thoughts on the two current candidates?
Just really candid. I think I've met Congressman Rose a couple times. Nice guy. I think got his heart in the right place. Of course, Senator Blackburn's been in politics a long time, and 30 years, I guess. That's probably really close. You mentioned earlier. I think we need something different in Nashville. I think we need a little dose of Trump and a little dose of Doge in Nashville, Tennessee. I think that we've become far too complacent. The establishment, celebrity politics, seems to be the marching order. I just heard today that we had leadership folks using the term, for some of us that say that we've got some budget issues in Tennessee that need to be corrected. I think what I heard secondhand was that person had said that that's misinformation. And my God, I wouldn't use that word. After what we just lived through with COVID, to even utter the word misinformation, let's just call it what it is. If you think something's a lie, let's call it a lie. Let's get away from all this silly, mamsy-pamsy baloney that these politicians seem to communicate in.
Absolutely. Now, I do want to clarify something.
I don't want to sound like I'm ranting, because I think, we live in the best of places. Tennessee's a wonderful place.
Right.
But aren't you sick of gutless politicians, Dave? I am.
And we got so many of them. Tennessee has got more than its share.
I think they're everywhere, but I do think that we've got more than our share in Tennessee. And I told somebody this the other day, and I say this with a smile on my face, but I think some of these people were the kids in the 6th grade that run around with a constant wedgie and a big snot wad running down their face, and everybody picked on them all the time, because it seems like they've got a vendetta against people.
Yeah.
And the backroom deals and some of the silly, foolish, there's a word I can't use. My wife is going to kick me in the shins, but it starts with chicken and ends with something else that I use for that. But that's
a perfect description. Perfect description of them.
And I really think that we need to stop that. Let's unfortunately, I think the communists, the Muslims, those that hate America, the Democrats, they've been very successful in effeminating men in America.
Absolutely.
And I think, part of the reason that we did our prayer resolution was because I saw that we were facing problems that we just weren't going to be able to solve legislatively or financially. Even though we're spending money like we're going out of business, we weren't going to be able to do that. And we need a move of God. And I think that, unfortunately, many of our pulpits have become sanitized, and we're afraid to call out sin, and we're afraid to call out wrongdoing.
Yep.
And I think that we as watchmen on the wall are supposed to do that with love, in compassion, but to call out that which is wrong. And we've gotten away from that. And what that leads to, I think that the two most dangerous characteristics you can find in a man or a woman, but I'm going to pick on the men for right now, is an incompetent man, someone who has not established an ability to be to gain mastery in something or anything.
Right.
And that becomes a dangerous attribute if a person's put in leadership, in my experience. The second attribute, and I think it often goes along with that, is a lack of confidence, a lack of personal courage or confidence. And I think when you find a person that is absent those two, or has, he's absent of competency and he doesn't have a lot of confidence in self, those people often become the end justifies any means kind of people. And they're mean and they're dangerous. They're unpredictable, and they will do anything to promote themselves or to accomplish whatever they think the goal is. And I think those are dangerous people. And I think there's a lot of them in politics, to be honest with you, that they will just do anything. And that's too bad. And I think both parties have that. I think weak people in the Democrat Party that you and I grew up with, fostered conditions that have allowed this neo-Marxist movement that we have today. Yep. From the Jasmine Crockett's to the Justin Jones, the yelling, the screaming, the distracting, the lack of any respect for decorum, the hatred of the Constitution, and yet quoting the Constitution back to us is a common thing. And that bred in that weakness of the old Democrat Party. And so it concerns me that we see some of that in my party. I'm a Republican. I wouldn't vote for a Democrat for dog catcher. And I'm going to vote for the Republican person, even if they're not perfect, because I am not perfect.
Now, I want to clarify something. Can I clarify real quick? I want to clarify. You are considering a run. I just want to make sure everybody heard that you are considering a run.
I've been praying about this for a while because I'm concerned about where we're going. And I appreciate the other two or three folks. I understand there may be a third that's thrown their name in the hat. I wouldn't consider to run for me. I'm praying about whether I apply to the 7 million people of Tennessee to serve as governor. And I hadn't got a good hard answer from the Lord yet, but I do have some thoughts on what are the priorities. And, it's my perspective.
Right.
God's blessed me to see lots of things in life, and I'm thankful for that. And where I might have been a subject matter expert on a couple things in life, I don't know. Now that I've been in politics for 3 years, I don't know if I have any subject matter expertise in anything anymore. So I'm careful about using that term. But I think there are some basic constitutional concepts and some leadership concepts that have to be put into play. And, Donald Trump is not a perfect person. I think he would tell you that if you sit down. Well, I've never chatted with President Trump, but I think he would say that. But I think part of what all of us like about him is his boldness to just pursue what he thinks is right.
Absolutely.
And to say what he thinks is accurate. And so the Democrats hate him. They want to kill him. They want to put him in prison. But many in our own party don't really like him because he is very much populist in his opinion. I think I'm more constitutional than he is.
Oh, I don't doubt that. I don't doubt that.
But I do think he loves the country, and I think he loves people. And I think, and I got to tell you, I go to political events sometimes, and I'll see all the politicians gather and congregate together away from the people they work for.
Right.
And you see President Trump do just the opposite.
Yeah, you're right. He does. He gets into the crowd every time. Hey, based on earlier conversations, we've got some slides to go along with what we're going to talk about. And the first one that I want to put up, and this, you've already kind of started the conversation. Now, I labeled it Fritz's Framework for Freedom, and then we're going to get to your top 10. But a lot of this goes into what you're talking about in terms of being direct. And I think that's a good one for the audience to see. And so there's a few different slides.
And not being mean, Dave. And by the way, I will say I'm much thinner than I am in the photograph you've got up. My wife has put me on a strict diet. So the fat guy on the screen and me, there's a few pounds difference there.
Okay. I don't think that was going to be the deciding factor for anybody.
Well, I'm happy. I'm losing a little bit of weight. But I will... I'll speak for me. I am tired of hearing politicians tell me what they think I want to hear. Yep. And what I have found, and I made a commitment, and sometimes to a fault, I try to carry this out, but my commitment was, one of my commitments I made in running for office, is you'd never have to wonder what I was thinking. And I try to be professional and loving and kind. I am a born-again Christian, and I am supposed to be kind to fellow image bearers of God. But I am not supposed to sugarcoat things to the point that we don't get the message across. You've heard me probably say this before. I think that we somewhat carry that role of the watchman on the wall. And I have a responsibility to call some of this stuff out. And if that hurts somebody's feelings a little bit, I'm okay with that. Let's talk about it. And if I hurt your feelings, I'll apologize. I'm not trying to be mean, but there's some things that are very black and white. I know that there are some people that won't hardly speak to me now because of some of the statements I've made on this ridiculous House Bill 533 that we passed this year, that 37 Republicans voted no and 8 voted present not voting. So 45, if I've got my count right, of us didn't vote for this bill, and we just guaranteed the right to contraception and in vitro fertilization. Wow. And, I'm not trying to be mean to the people, but it's a crystal clear black and white thing. From killing babies in their mama's belly, whether it's by scalpel or by pill, is a great sin, and God will judge this nation for it, and we need to get ourselves away from that. I think it's unfortunate that Governor Lee didn't heed the letter that myself and Jody wrote and that Chris Todd had the guts to send and that 11 other folks had the courage to sign. Shame on him for that. But, I think we have a responsibility to call those things out. So to your point, not to sound like I'm harping on these things too much, but, I've had it up to my nose holes. But it's part of the reason I ran for office that politicians will offer some nebulous statement on what they're going to do.
Right.
And
non-committal, vague.
Well, yeah, it is a non-committal, and it's a feel-good thing. And so to a fault, sometimes we'll offer things that, will kind of tick people off, even in my district. But I have found this, Dave. I've found this to be true with folks who identify as Democrats and Republicans, that they may not agree with what I say.
Right.
But because I'm straightforward with it, they're like, you know what? At least Fritz is telling us what he thinks. And I think most people appreciate that. Now, there's some, the fringe crazy people that will, want to egg my house or do something mean to me just because I have an opinion on something. But most people, um, I found them to be somewhat respectful outside the political realm, just in the community, sitting at a Cracker Barrel or having coffee in the morning. And we can talk about very sensitive, very charged emotional issues. And I'll have an opinion that's 180 degrees off with someone else. And we can still finish our coffee without choking to death on it. And we can shake hands or hug at the end of the conversation and walk away friends. And we need to be able to do that. But we need to be able to do that after we have been clear and communicated what we think. Now, last thing I'll say on that, so I don't spend too much time on this. I think part of the problem is that people have been in politics a long time. They've taken so much money from other people, and it's expensive. And I've taken money from some folks, and I appreciate every dime. I think I appreciate more those $25 checks or $100 checks that I got when I was running. I'm not taking any money now. But they've taken so much money from some of these groups that they no longer think for themselves. And I think I could point to several. I'm going to try to be nice and not call them out by name. But they don't have an opinion. They just wait for a lobbyist to tell them what to think, or someone from the governor's office to come into a meeting and tell them what to think. And we'll talk about that in a minute. Yeah. The governor in the state of Tennessee does not have the constitutional authority to write or manage legislation, and we need to end that.
Yep, absolutely. And that's one of the big complaints. One of the big complaints that I have is, it's clear that he's not a legislator, yet every year 70 to 80 bills are carried by legislators for him. And then, of course, the effect when that's brought into a committee. Well, hey, this is the governor's bill, and a lot of people
Dave, I have lost your audio.
I can hear you. Can you hear me now?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yeah, well, I have lost you. I have.
Well, I'll tell you what.
Something has happened.
You just go ahead and talk. Go ahead and talk.
I got you again now.
Oh,
I got you again now. You went silent on this side. I just I have lots of thoughts on this, so we'll talk through however you want to talk through them, and I'll offer this in great humility, and I will tell you, brother. After I retired from my last career role, I wanted to come home and live a quiet life. I wanted to be a full-time grandparent and a full-time husband. And God has blessed my wife and I. We wanted to travel some together and see things. And of course, she runs a small business, and I want to help her. And I want to build a few more rifles and get better at 200 yards and 300 yards and 500 yards than what I am now. And I want to hunt some animals that I haven't hunted. I bought a 45-70 because I want to go to Alaska and hunt. And, I someone live the quiet life, but I got to tell you, I got into this because I saw us trending all the wrong way on things like essentialism and COVID vaccines. Yep. And it would be helpful to me if some of those people that made those horrible decisions would come back and say, hey, I apologize. I was wrong. I messed up. We all mess up. Yep. And we're going to do better. But what I hear is from directors of emergency management, when we have my essentialism bill that said that, you can't declare a lawful occupation, a person who owns a lawful occupation, essential based on non-essential based on that occupation. And if you do, you can be sued for it.
Right.
Well, people's heads just spun about that. I think that's fair and equitable. Yeah. I think I work for people. I think we've got our perspective messed up a little bit in Nashville right now. And I might give you some examples of that later as we talk about how I think that the departments have decided that the people work for them rather than the state of Tennessee. The employees in the state of Tennessee work for the people of the state of Tennessee. We got to reacquire that azimuth.
Absolutely. Let's go ahead and start with your. We've got your top 10, and we're going to start at 10 and work the way up. These are Fritz's top 10 for Tennessee. And so we're going to list them up here. What would Monty do?
Yeah.
And hopefully it'll be what will Monty do.
Yeah. So we do a lot of that. We do a lot of picking winners and losers in government. That's not a role of government. And whether that is industry in incentivizing a company taking tax dollars, often, and we'll talk more about the budget stuff as we get all the way through the list, but we're charging people 4% on every dollar that they spend on a loaf of bread or a gallon of milk. And then we're using part of that tax collected in these bloated budgets, and we're incentivizing companies to come in, and we're creating a whole set of problems. We will take hundreds of acres of farmland to build a facility, and then this year we'll pass a bill to incentivize us continuing to farm on that farmland by stripping the owner of their ownership rights as to decide what they're going to use the property for. It's a whole messed up thing.
That's the conversation easements, right? Conversation easements. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah. Conservation easements. Yep. Yeah. I think I said this in committee and I got gasped. I said it, gasp come out of people. And I said it on the floor, something else on the floor. But I think our founders are rolling over in their grave that we just passed that. And I said that in the ag committee. And I said on the floor, and I'm sure it offended some of my thin-skinned colleagues, but I think we've sold our birthright.
Yep.
We're waving a little bowl of porridge in front of folks to try to steal that birthright. That's that's an abhorrent thought to me. And so, anyways, we're picking winners and losers. We're incentivizing things for this group or that group based on this criteria or that criteria, rather than just something for all Tennesseans.
Right.
And we should be spending public funds on things that benefit all Tennesseans. But the same thing applies in our education system. We do that on this silly voucher scam that we pass through. We do it in our colleges and universities. We've just had reportedly that a couple of universities have said that, they're kind of skirting around the whole DEI thing by just calling it something else.
Yep.
And I don't know if you recall, but one of my budget amendments this year, I tried to be the Doge guy this year, was to take $5.8 million out of the budget that the governor's office had set aside for diversity and inclusion type things at the University of Tennessee, Knoxville. And why would you even put that in your budget? I mean, what absence of thought results in that? But
no, that was deliberate. That was not accidental. That's absolutely deliberate.
Yeah, well, you're giving some of them more credit for being smart than I do. I think we need to get back to a pure form of meritocracy.
Absolutely.
That we reward excellence and we reward initiative and we reward those who apply reason and logic. And we've gotten away from that. We've hit this whole thing in America, not just in Tennessee, but we've hit this. We aim for mediocrity. That's not America. That's not Tennessee, and it's not going to work well for us in the long run.
There was a movie several years ago. I'm trying to remember the name of it now, and it was based on that. And it was all about the dumbing down of America, and I cannot remember the name of it, but that just put me in mind of it. Where nobody, somebody of average intelligence was considered a genius. Somebody that could do the most basic things were they were just wow, they were stellar.
So I'll offer one or two more sentences on that last slide. I'm a liberty person, and liberty is not freedom. Freedom has become something we interpret that it's kind of like our health department's giving out condoms and birth control pills, right? That they're free, and nothing's free.
Right.
We just reappropriated my money and your money to take care of somebody's contraception needs, and that should never be. That's an abhorrent thought. We're encouraging as a society immoral behaviors. We need to stop that. Yep. And so, anyways, liberty is different. Liberty is that you have the opportunity to do the right thing of your own volition, and you fully bear the consequences, reward or disappointment as a result of your decision, your investment of effort, and your application of reason. I think that's what liberty is. And we need to get back to a liberty focus in Tennessee. We've gotten away from that, and we've started to embrace this whole woke and again, I think it's a Marxist communist.
Yep.
Mr. I Hate America has polluted our thought processes with, well, everybody should get equal outcomes. Well, that's not America. You've got the opportunity to go apply yourself. I heard somebody put it recently that in that life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, the first step in the pursuit of happiness is getting your butt out of bed in the morning, going to work. And,
yep, absolutely.
And then that enables you to be able to buy stuff and own possessions, and because that's how it started with our founders. It was more about property ownership than it was the pursuit of happiness. That was a compromise that was made.
Right. Number 9.
Yep. So I'm an infrastructure person. I think we've got our priorities messed up a little bit. So I just spent 10 days in Germany, or 9 days in Germany, and I got to tell you, we need to send the Department of Transportation to Germany to see how they do the roads.
Oh yeah.
Because my goodness, there was a difference. There was a marked difference on every road. The cobblestone streets are better than some of the roads that we have in Memphis and Nashville. But I think we've got it a little bit mixed up in how we're working on infrastructure in Tennessee, and this whole tunnel thing that's come up recently. Some of us kind of knew that was coming, but Tennesseans ought to expect a yield on their tax dollars that have been taken away from them. They ought to expect a yield that services all Tennesseans, right? And it ought to be a durable thing. And so I would put in an order of priority for our infrastructure, energy first, because I think without electricity and without energy, you don't have water, you don't have sewage, you don't have solid waste disposition or any of those things. And, I had the privilege to initiate the whole having a Tennessee energy policy my first year. And then second year, we got to restructure the Energy Policy Council. Unfortunately, it's taken us a doggone year to get all the appointments made. The getting something done on the date that's in the law seems to be a foreign concept with some. But anyways, we've got that now, and I appreciate the fact that we've got most all those people named. But water, potable water supply. We're struggling with the whole Duck River thing. We've got so many people moving in. Part of it because we've taken your tax dollars and my tax dollars, and we have incentivized companies and people to move into Tennessee.
Yep.
And I think that the incentive for moving to Tennessee, whether you are moving here for residence or for industry or for agriculture, ought to be liberty. And I think that is the most magnetic of all factors. That if there is an abundance of liberty, that in and of itself will draw people to make investments in Tennessee. I think that's been proven throughout history. As a matter of fact, I think that when we incentivize investments, back to item number 10, and we pick winners and losers, we only broadcast a fertilize on the ground to get those industries to grow for a period of time, and we must go back and reapply that from time to time. Yeah. Liberty becomes something that is organic in the fields of Tennessee that will continue to grow. And if we focus on liberty, prosperity will follow for the masses. Prosperity of the masses in world history has only occurred where there's been a high degree of liberty, and America is the number one example of that. So we've got to start focusing on the liberty side of that more. But back to the water. We're facing challenges we never thought we'd face in Tennessee, just not having enough water to service. And, so I think we could make some investments from the state budget perspective, rather than investing in a company to get them to come here and stay a few years and maybe have to offer them another hook or a bribe to get them to stay longer. Let's make sure that we can keep the lights on, that we can keep the water flowing and the toilets flushing, waste, with sewage. Solid waste, the big problems with that, I think, and those are growing problems coming. Certainly the roads become an issue. They are an issue. Yep. I don't think we've done as well as we could with the roads.
But we had a huge tax increase in 2015. We passed a gas tax in 2015, and you can't tell it. You cannot tell it.
Yeah, I've heard people say that we need to expand all of our roads. I'm on the other thought there. I think we ought to take care of what we have now. And the traffic, I'm in one of the worst traffic places, my district, where 40 and 75 come together. Ooh. And we certainly probably need a few more lanes there. But we can't build enough lanes to get ourselves out of the traffic issue that we have now. And when you start, when candidates for office start talking about we're going to go from 2 lanes to 4 lanes in all these roads, well, that means somebody's property rights have just been violated in many cases. And we need to be greater respecters of property rights. And then emergency services. And that's a broad term, but I think that it's tremendously important for us to make sure that we have those capabilities in place, energy, electrical production, electricity production, certainly natural gas, fuel for our vehicles, and whether it's pipelines or road delivery, to make sure that we can keep the economy going. Those are all important things. And we need to make sure that we expand those capacities to meet what we expect the demand signal to be. And so it's one of the things I hope to do with this Energy Policy Council before I get out of my state rep role, is to make sure that there is a usable report that comes out on an annual basis. I tried to do that this year, and I was in somebody's doghouse in leadership in the Senate or House or both, and the governor's office, I guess. And so they killed some things I just think were stupid. But
I want to say something about that. They are so petty up there. Now, they get mad because somebody doesn't go along with what they wanted, or you're pushing something they don't like that puts them on the spot, that really, generally speaking, exposes what they're not doing that they're supposed to be doing, or vice versa. And so they just kill it. That's insulting to that whole district. That's telling that whole district, that's giving your whole district the finger. It's not just that, we'll show Monty.
It is, but bless their hearts. They're looking for leadership, and sometimes the person that's leading things is not the one with most rank on his collar. You know that from your service. I know that from my service. Sometimes you just got to come and be that good example. But anyways, we were going to try to move who to report to for the Energy Council away from the comptroller's office and back to. We were going to move it back to TDEC and ECD, because I thought that's where, energy policy ought to be.
Yeah.
Neither one of those organizations wanted it. And which we'll talk about that in a little bit, but this whole concept that the departments and agencies in the governor's office get to decide what they want while the legislation's being drafted is, while I say that smiling, it infuriates me, because they don't understand the Constitution. They don't understand Article 2 of the Tennessee Constitution at all. Yep. And we got to get back to that. So I think infrastructure investment rather than corporate welfare would be a good policy for the next 4 years.
Absolutely. Number 8, fight for property rights.
Yeah. So back to that. Life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, because I think that's much about the property rights. Average Tennesseans work pretty hard to be able to own their car, their boat, their shotgun, their home, their farm, their whatever, their cattle. And we ought to be respecters of the sanctity of that right of property ownership. It was big to our founders. It should be much bigger to us than what it is right now. There's almost a tendency sometimes, you'll hear it in committee meetings, and especially when the organizations come in or somebody from the governor's office comes to talk about it, it's a concept. The peasant doesn't really have property ownership rights. They're just begging for privileges in front of the potentate, if you will. And we need to stop that. We need to become respecters of property rights in Tennessee, and I think that's a big concept, but I think Tennessee families deserve that.
Absolutely, absolutely, and it's like you, and I think we may hit this in a little later in one of the later points, but you should not lose your main residence or your farm due to delinquent taxes. There should be some workaround. Yeah, you got to pay the taxes, but to actually lose your property, that's just not right.
We'll hit that on 5, and I'll talk about the bill I've got drafted for this year.
Okay. Number 7.
So, my wife, when she was pregnant with our sons, I remember her reading to them, and my daughter-in-laws did some of that kind of thing, and they would speak to their children. They knew that human being they carried inside them was precious, and they loved it so much and had never seen it, maybe on an ultrasound or something like that, but they'd never seen the little boy or the little girl, and but they'd speak to them. And then the other side of that token is, of course, my grandparents are all passed on now. But if your grandparents or your father or your mother are in the hospital and they're facing a health crisis, one of the things we'll do is hold their hand and tell them we love them and reassure them. And that's important. And so I think that the sanctity of life must be upheld from the womb until natural death. And we failed that miserably, I think, this year in at least one case with this IVF and guaranteed contraception bill, which included emergency contraceptive pills, and they can become abortifacients. And I think that's a horrible thing that we allowed to pass. But it is incumbent upon us, I think, to treat that baby in its mama's belly or our 99-year-old grandmother with full sanctity and respect as an image bearer of Almighty God. And I think, and you may see this legislation from me this year too, last year's a state rep to offer legislation, but I'm working on something that I would call the assault on the sanctity of life. I think that certainly if someone, what we call first degree murder, capital murder, takes a life, that is due capital punishment.
Yep. I
think, this past year we we passed a bill that if an adult raped a 12-year-old, and that was a way too complex bill, I think, but I voted for it because of the core concept of right. Rape being a capital offense, but it's far too complicated bill. But just simply, I think that if an adult commits an aggravated rape, that ought to be the possibility of a capital punishment, because they have attacked the sanctity of life. If some creepy man rapes a young lady on a college campus or some woman coming home from work, they have done something immeasurably wrong to that person, and it is an assault on the sanctity of life, and there ought to be an option for the death penalty for that person. And human trafficking.
Yes. If
you're moving bodies to make them work for some reduced fee or nothing, or to use them in the sex trade, I'm telling you, we ought to execute those people after we try them, find them guilty. If the evidence is there, we ought to execute them.
Yep.
And I think the same thing for abortion. And I know that's just going to make some people's heads spin, but that doctor knows what they're doing. Whether they do it with a scalpel or a pill, that is an assault on the sanctity of the most innocent life. And Scripture's clear. It says, "Don't hurt the little children. Better to have a millstone wrapped around your neck and thrown into the sea." So I'm working on that. I don't know that we're going to get it pulled together, but sanctity of life is tremendous in God's economy. How a culture treats life and the sanctity of life is tremendously important in his economy of justice as to how that society is rewarded. And I think we've got some big work to get closer to what is an accurate reflection of protecting the sanctity of life.
Absolutely. Number 6.
I think that this is something that, excuse me, we failed on the last couple of years. You mentioned this in your lead up to the interview tonight. We went to Article 3, Section 5, as I recall, of the Tennessee Constitution, talked about rebellion and invasion, and it said the General Assembly shall declare by law. And we did that last year, and we give the governor the funding and the authority to send a brigade-sized force to help Texas repel the invasion. Not a Title 10 deployment, but a state deployment, so that they could help Governor Abbott, because at that period of time, the Texas National Guard, the Texas Department of Public Safety was putting up barriers, and the federal government was tearing them down.
Yep.
And some of those people that come across that border were people that still criminal, but they were coming in looking for a better life. You know, maybe they weren't nefarious, but I'm convinced that we had Chinese soldiers come across that border. I'm convinced that we had people that were from Libya or some nation state that hates us, Iran, and they probably changed a passport somewhere nefariously in another country, and they come across that open border as a Syrian or some other citizen, and we don't even know who they are, and they've come here to do really bad things. I'm convinced that's happened. And so I think all the incentives that we put in place, and we put incentives in place. Heck, we offered a bill last year that said all blue eyes, brown eyes, dark skin, light skin, doesn't matter. You bring documents when you register your kid for school this year in a public school that proves that they're a birth certificate, military paper, something, you know, and we had to put together. We couldn't pass that because it was going to require that person who couldn't provide the documentation to pay the TISA amount. It is not the responsibility of the Tennessee citizen to educate the foreign children of this world. It is not. I say that again. It is not. We shouldn't do it. But we do things like that. We allow them to come to school here, and we don't have the collective guts to stand up against this Plyler versus Doe and do the right thing for Tennessee citizens. And so we incentivize illegals coming here. Back to the human trafficking. I was not a big fan of hiring another 115 troopers. But if I had the opportunity, I might reassign a good number of those troopers into a squad that was going to take on the human trafficking in a big way, because I'm convinced that with the interstate arteries we have in this state, it's a big thing, and that needs to, by gosh, be stopped in Tennessee. Slavery is an immoral thing, and it needs to be stopped in its tracks. And if we're going to spend all this money on state law enforcement and Homeland Security, then maybe we need to put a little more effort into stopping that in Tennessee. Okay. And I think that those things, last thing I'll say on that one, and I haven't asked the DA's conference yet. I'm going to ask them, but we put a law in place. It was House Bill 1872. Last year's my piece of legislation that if you are criminally illegal here in the state of Tennessee and you commit any violent crime or you commit any crime with a weapon, not just a firearm, like some of my poor old gun-hating counterparts, they want to always make it a firearm. Well, a knife, a stick, a club, or whatever, it can be a deadly weapon as well. They just hate guns. Right. Let's be honest. Yeah. They hate guns. They don't want you to have guns. They're showing their hand. They've got a card turned over on the table. And anyway, I digress. But we've got to prosecute that to put those people up for life with no parole, to make that law effective. And so I hope the DAs around the state, I see lots of newspaper articles where an illegal alien violently assaults a person. Well, that fits under what we wrote. We should be locking them up and throwing away the key. I don't want to pay the $45,000 a year to keep them incarcerated, But what I do want to do is to discourage those criminal elements from coming to my state.
Absolutely. And we haven't, I think our state, our supermajority has pretty much magnetized our state. I want to go back to Plyler versus Doe. That was a 1982 Supreme Court opinion, and it was actually based in Texas. And at the time, the state of Texas, or actually this was I think a county in Texas, they were getting a lot of illegals, and they were like, well, hey, we want to, be able to charge them. If you're telling us that we can't deport them, we should be able to charge them something to use our school. And the court said, no, it's not a significant enough amount, and you just have to suck it up. Well, we see what that's gotten us. But, that's one of the problems. People hear Supreme Court opinion and they just fold. As if, we have to do whatever the Supreme Court says. I think we should just flat out ignore Plyler versus Doe. I don't even want to challenge it. Ignore it. Ignore that. Ignore the Oberfell, which totally unconstitutional. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that we have relegated our reading and understanding of the Constitution to folks in black robes.
Right.
And our founders had a purpose for the court and the courts. And we stray away from those. We've weaponized it to become that they're the final say in all things. I think all three departments in the state government, legislature, the General Assembly, the executive department, and the judicial have a responsibility to stand against unconstitutional things. So if we in the General Assembly pass something that the governor thinks is unconstitutional, he should veto it. And he should then note why he thinks it's unconstitutional. Then if, him being a weak governor, because it takes just a majority to pass that, let's say we send it back to him, I think he has, if the governor or she, if they think that it is indeed unconstitutional, they have an obligation, a sworn obligation to resist that. And I think that we've gotten away from that because that requires a little grit and courage. Yeah. And I think we're short on that in some places today.
Absolutely.
And, we want to all sing Kumbaya together.
Absolutely. And you mentioned the fact that as far as overriding the governor's veto, you do it by the same margin you pass the bill. Yet in Tennessee, you would think that our governor has all this power. Well, he really doesn't have all this power. But the legislature plays that game. Really, the legislature is the most powerful body. And the governor, his main responsibility is make sure that the laws are obeyed.
Faithfully executed.
That's his main responsibility. And, and in your case, so if let's say you do decide to run and let's say you were the governor, then all these things you want to do, you basically have to use your bully pulpit to do it. And in a lot of cases, that would be shaming the legislature into doing the right thing. Is that pretty accurate?
Well, I wouldn't put it that way. I would say painting the case for the legitimacy and the reasoning behind why you want to do something. We may get to this in a moment, but I don't think the governor should be authoring legislation or trying to manage legislation with his minions. I don't think that we should have state employees coming into committees and testifying against the rights of the citizen. I certainly don't think we should have state employees lurking down the halls in packs of people with lobbyists, especially on gun laws. But they do this on things like wetlands, right, and things like property rights, like some of the bills that we've talked about. And so they know which ones of these legislators that they can go in and kind of bully around, and they do it. And unacceptable. That's we'll get to that in a minute, but that needs to be a position that the executive department does not have. There should be no legislative directors because that's not a constitutional authority. I think those folks would be much better suited for helping constituents feel like they have an avenue to the governor, because I hear a lot. I called the governor's office, or I wrote the governor's office. I didn't get anything back.
Yeah, imagine that. Number 5. No citizen should ever face eviction due to property tax delinquency of their primary residence or farm. And I think I brought this up earlier, but go ahead and hit on it some more. I'm sure you've got some more details.
Well, I just say this. In Tennessee, a citizen must never feel like they never really own their home. And so I think what we're doing right now, I would call a taxation against unrealized capital gains. So if we're in a group of 100, 150 Republicans and I ask the question and say, raise your hand if you think it's okay to tax unrealized capital gains on your 401k. Nobody's going to raise their hand. Yet on our real estate, we're doing that now. And we're doing that much, again, lots of this stuff is, I think, related. We have so aggressively used dollars to recruit people to come in here that we have hyperinflated the property values. And so our reassessment schedule has resulted in people who 10 years ago paid $125,000 for a house on a lot that it's now worth $450 or $375. And so we tax against a value that they've not realized. I think that property, my shotgun, my Ford truck is worth what I would pay for it, period. And so you're going to see a bill from me or two bills. I haven't decided yet if I'm going to split them for sure. But you're going to see a bill from me that this year that says that the value of the real estate is fixed at the 2020 appraisal or what you've since then paid for it. And that's what you ought to be taxed against. And that doesn't fix all the issues with property taxes. The county commissions are going to need a year to be able to go and adjust that. But we should not, we should not be hyperinflating these values and assigning that. We should. And secondly, I would say this, that a Tennessean, a Tennessee family should never worry that the government is going to evict them because of tax delinquency. I think that is really an abhorrent thought. And we do that. And yes, we all have to pitch into the the collective pile to make sure that we have emergency services in schools. And we'll talk a little bit more about schools specifically in a minute. But that's important. But to say that we're going to kick an 80-year-old out of their home, that their residence, and they're a U.S. citizen, now this should only apply to U.S. citizens, that we're going to kick them out because they've fallen behind a year or 2 years or 5 years on their taxes is ludicrous and wrong to me. And we should stop that. And at the end of that person's life, or when they pass it on to the next person in their family or whatever, there ought to be a settling of the back taxes, right? No interest, but a settling of the back taxes. But we should never evict that person. That's just the wrong thing. I want to try to fix that. I'm going to take a shot at that legislatively. I would hope that the gubernatorial candidates would be fully supportive of this. I'm certain that there's going to be some lobby groups that are going to hate that. But you know what? I didn't do this to be popular. I think that's the right thing to do.
I think a lot of people will agree with you on that one. Number 4. Clean soil, air, and water. Protect citizens from geoengineering, weather modification, and fake meat. We have not and will not delegate authority to the globalists or the U.S. government to modify the weather or restructure our food supply.
Well, just as the slide says there, Dave, Tennesseans have not delegated authority to globalist billionaires, these people that want to have fake meats and dim the sun and all this kind of crazy stuff and redesign so that they can become wealthier, nor to the U.S. government to modify our weather. Title 58-2-116A in current in Tennessee code lays out some of the things that the governor should on a continuing basis do. And he and his departments are supposed to be, as part of the emergency code in 58, they're supposed to be on a continuing basis looking at conditions that might contribute to forest fires or floods, like floodplain management and things like that, and weather modification. Now, I understand that law is about 25 years old, but we need to be doing that today. There's a huge outcry in America. We got Bill 2063 through last year before last, prohibiting geoengineering in Tennessee. And it's got a small fine, $10,000 fine, part of the Clean Air Act.
Right.
The truth is, current governor doesn't want to enforce any of that, based on what I've been told. But the governor doesn't really get to decide unless he says it's unconstitutional. And I would challenge him to find the unconstitutional element of 58-2-116A or the Clean Air Act that we passed last year. But we should take action there, and to the point that I would hope whomever the next governor is, that the federal responsibility, because we had the 2024 House Energy and Water Bill had $37+ million for solar radiation management. I'm told what that means is these smart people want to dim the sunlight that's hitting the earth, right? Now, these are the same people that want us to use voltaic cells for all our energy production too. So I don't know how smart they are, but the federal government was putting money into that, and they have for a long time, for decades. The federal government's been involved in weather modification. I sent the governor a letter last fall, and I asked TDEC to conduct additional samples after Helene in Upper East Tennessee, because a couple days after the water hit Irwin so hard, my pastor and I took my pickup truck and a tractor and some chainsaws and stuff to chip in and see how we could help, right? So how much work you're going to get done with a preacher, a politician, and a pickup truck is debatable, but you still want to go try to do the right thing, right?
Right.
And those poor people had been devastated, and they were devastated in Washington County and Greene County and Johnson County and all that area. And so I asked the TDEC folks to take some additional samples, and they weren't given permission to do that. And so when I pointed out that 58-2-116A really is telling them they have to do that kind of stuff, in committee, TDEC leadership just basically said, we're not going to enforce that. We don't have the manpower to do that. And
so why do you make a law if you're not going to enforce it?
Well, we need to fix that. And to the farmers part of that, Tennessee farmers need leadership that will stand up for our cattle farmers, for our hay farmers that sell hay to the cattle farmers, to the pig farmers, the chicken farmers or chicken ranchers, however you want to look at that. These globalists that are putting in this whole fake meat thing, they want to compete and put cattle farming and cattle ranching out of business. That's their goal. I think we need to protect that.
Yeah, I agree.
And we had Representative Halsey, who I think is just a fine guy. He tried to address the whole fake meat thing last year, and between the governor's office and the Farm Bureau, they shot that down. Well, to me, that's crazy. Why wouldn't we protect it? It's not like we're protecting a Holstein from a Jersey.
The Farm Bureau shot it down. The Farm Bureau shot down the fake meat.
We're trying to protect the industry. And so, we need some leadership on that. We need a governor that's okay with saying he'll stand up for the farmers and what has been traditional farming in Tennessee. I don't know many people that want to eat something that's grown from cells extracted from something else in a petri dish. And, I don't have any desire
Me either.
For that.
But just to clarify, the Farm Bureau shut that down, and the governor.
Yeah, they hated the bill.
Wait a minute. Okay, they hated the bill that was going to stop fake meat.
That's right. Yeah.
Good Lord.
Okay. Yeah, their lobbyists did. Let me clarify. I think my local Farm Bureau in Loudoun and Roane County probably was all for the bill, but the folks in Nashville talked against it. And we even had some of these think tanks talk about how you can't Republicans don't prop up industries. Well, I agree with that. I don't think we ought to, but this is not propping up. there comes a time when it's government's responsibility to provide a sense of protection. And, you know,
that'd be a good question. I'm sorry. That would be a good question for Representative Rose, because, you know, he's got some very strong Farm Bureau connections. Matter of fact, his sister, Radonna, I think used to be maybe the vice president or whatever, but he's got a long history with them. So that's definitely a good question for him.
And so I just, in summary of that, we need to continue to take on the geoengineering weather modification. Tennessee led the way with that. By happenstance with me, I'll give all the credit for the good idea to Bud Halsey. But I got to carry that bill through. Since then, 32 states, I think, have followed us. Florida passed some good legislation. They kind of played off the idea that we had in this year's bill that we got through the House, but we had 3 senators vote no, that adding additional prosecutorial authority on the geoengineering, specifically supply chain, right? Getting to the chemicals, which is important. And Lowe, Reeves, and Harshbarger voted against that. I'm hoping that they're getting worn out with phone calls and they'll reconsider that and be able to reconsider that in the spring, because we all make mistakes. I've messed up on those. So I'm not picking on those 3 guys, but I think they were a little out of touch on how important this is to the people that they work for.
Okay, so what's the current enforcement mechanism on that bill, on that legislation? Can you hear me?
It is simply a prohibition, and the prohibition violation, the penalty for violating the prohibition is $10,000 fine.
Who monitors
and so
that?
What we were trying to do, that's a TDEC function. What we were trying to do was assign the prosecutorial authority over to the Attorney General and to district attorneys. And we were combining 58-2-116A and the Clean Air Act into this new bill to try to make it more comprehensive. Again, the governor's office worked against that bill. And I don't know if it's because it was mine or because, I don't know. Again, out of touch. I think sometimes these people need to get out from behind their bodyguards and away from the millionaires that they run with, and go talk to the average Joe in something other than a photo shoot. And that they would learn what's important to Tennesseans. This is an important topic.
Yeah.
The geoengineering is an important topic. I'll be interested to see what the gubernatorial candidates, how they respond to the geoengineering. Are we all still conspiracy theorists? Lee Zeldin, the EPA administrator, come out like 3 weeks ago and confirmed that there had been stratospheric aerosol injection, solar radiation management, weather modification, cloud seeding, blah, blah. It goes down the whole list, right?
For years, right?
Marine cloud brightening and all that kind of stuff. And so I got to have a little fun with this. I've picked on the Republicans a little bit tonight, so I'm going to have to pick on the Democrats. Poor old John Ray Clements. The night we passed 2063, he offered a Bigfoot amendment. Now, he made himself look like a complete horse's ass, right? And he had to explain it. William helped with that, getting him to explain it. But we had leadership that didn't vote for that bill and kind of went along with it and had fun with the whole Sasquatch amendment on that. And that's how uninformed and out of touch some of these people are. Again, you can go to Roane County, Loudoun County, Cumberland County, McMinn County, wherever you want to go, and you bring this topic up in a restaurant, in a coffee shop, there'll be somebody say, yeah, we need to do something about it. I'm telling you. And I had no idea until Halsey handed this to me. If I'd have known what train he was putting me in front of with this weather modification, I might have told him to get somebody else to carry this, because it's kept me busy.
But it's pathetic that a Republican supermajority opposes these type of things. And there's another problem we have in Tennessee. In Tennessee, when it comes to legislation, a lot of that T stands for toothless, because if you just say there's a prohibition on X, Y, or Z, but you don't assign it to somebody to monitor and enforce, nothing's going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you. And I did my best. I'm certain I could have done better with the bill that we did 2063. I wish there's a couple things I'd like to have done differently with it. I think the biggest thing we did here in Tennessee was get the conversation started, and we took enough. I was called enough names. I think that some of my counterparts in the other states have kind of taken it on. There's an old boy in South Carolina that's taking it on hard right now. There's a Landry down in, or middle name's Landry, is taking it on in Louisiana. So it's gotten some energy. In Florida, Senator Ileana Garcia. I had worked with Marla Maples, and I was introduced to her by one of my colleagues, and this was an important issue for her. So she was super helpful in taking what we learned in Tennessee and getting it to Senator Garcia and some of the folks in Florida. And Marla's super nice lady. She come up to Kingston last fall, she and a filmmaker, and they put together some documentary stuff. And we've got a big documentary coming out anytime now on that I'll be one of the persons speaking in it. So
cool.
Yeah, it's we're trying to keep pressure on this. It's important.
Absolutely. Number 3.
Mm-hmm. So I think Tennessee parents have been given by God the right to decide their education. I've said for a long time, and this for whatever reason, I'm not allowed to have this opinion. I guess I'm spreading disinformation, as they say, if I say this, but I think I'm right. Article 11, Section 12 of the Tennessee Constitution says Tennessee General Assembly shall provide for the maintenance, support, and eligibility standards of a system of free public schools. I don't think that we can pass what we passed with that because it was specific and restrictive. That's what the Constitution is, specific and restrictive. So
you're referencing the vouchers now.
Yes, yeah. Freedom scholarships.
Yeah.
I don't think we need to be liberated. We were already free here in East Tennessee, anyways. But it's unconstitutional. It's fiscally irresponsible. I will tell you, I think the next governor's got to have the guts to come in and suspend it immediately. And I know there's some good people that are getting some advantage from it now, and that's bad for them. But it's unconstitutional. We can't do that, and I'd be willing to take that fight on. And I don't know how that fight would come about, but I would direct the Department of Education to stop. Now, my Department of Education be a little bit smaller than the one we have now, but and it certainly be led by somebody else. But we need to fix that. And so it's come to me in thinking through that. Shall provide for the maintenance. That's pretty clear too.
Maintenance of effort issue.
Shall provide for maintenance, support, and eligibility standards for a system of free public schools. Yet the locals are paying about 30% on that total TISA cost. I'm not sure that we're in compliance with that part of the Constitution either. I'm not sure that we in Nashville ought not be paying for the end. If it's $10,000, we'll round it to that. I'm not sure we shouldn't be paying that and take that burden off the locals. And I'm not sure that wouldn't put us in a better position to make sure that the eligibility is more closely monitored from Nashville to make sure that we are meeting high academic standards and we are promoting excellence rather than mediocrity in Tennessee schools. And some of the school buildings that we have falling in around the state, you couldn't fix this in 1 year, you couldn't fix it in 10 years. But we ought to be heading that direction, I think, Dave. And I think we ought to take that burden off the locals. And I think the locals then, that $3,000 per student that they're paying, they ought to be able to reduce their taxes or whatever. But I think their first thought ought to be reducing taxes. Because if you liberate those dollars back into the pockets of the Tennesseans, good things happen in the economy.
Yeah. And
right now, those taxes are coming from, guess where? Things like property taxes and local sales tax. And so if there less revenue is required locally because you've taken and the schools are a big chunk of the local costs, right?
Right.
So if
The
you
biggest
shift
one.
that back
Yep.
to Nashville, where I think that's what the Constitution's saying it should be. I think it's saying shall provide for the maintenance. It doesn't say part of the maintenance, a portion of the maintenance. It said provide for the maintenance, support, and eligibility standards. That's specific, restrictive.
So
Language.
let me make sure I'm straight, because when I was talking maintenance of effort, that's what I've always heard at the county level. So like the county commissions they're always saying, because of the state law, we have to, it's called maintenance of effort, that we can't pay our county school system, and we can't cut their budget. Are you're talking about that, or are you talking about something additional? Am I missing something here?
I'm saying that it may be that the way that the intent of what's written, and there's a little more research needed on that it may be that we have shifted in the state some of the costs for keeping the schools up back to the locals that we shouldn't have shifted there.
Okay. Well, I'm sure the counties would be glad to hear that.
Well, that wouldn't prevent a county that wanted to promote excellence from collecting funds to do something else.
Right.
But to have that, let's talk base capability, right? Whatever that means. What is the base capability for a school? It's a building, a gym, a football field, 12 teachers, a principal, whatever. That's your base capability to have a capacity to serve X number of people.
Right.
And I think I could make the argument that's what that's telling us to do. And I would pursue that, because I think it would liberate the economy locally, which would be a good thing.
Right.
B, it would put the Department of Education in a position to set better standards. I think right now, I think K through college, in many ways, we're the envy of the nation in education. That's what I think. Now, I know that we have some kids that are having a hard time reading and having a hard time with the math. And I think part of that is because we have too much on the plate and because we have established a system of mediocrity. I do. I think, and much of that comes from Nashville.
Right. Oh, yeah. That comes from D.C. They've accepted it from D.C.
Yeah. And Trump's trying to fix that part of it now, and I'm sure people are finding. I'm sure Penny Schwinn's in the fight there for that. But I think that there's a structure that we're the envy of the nation in. I do. I think the fact that you could send your child to local school all the way through a community college or a technical program at virtually or almost no cost is a huge thing. The fact that you could get a bachelor's and maybe even a master's degree at a University of Tennessee or a Tennessee Tech at an affordable price comparatively to other states, I think we're in pretty good position with that. Now, some of the stuff, the DEI stuff that continues, the anti-American stuff, the fact that, I've got a constituent that just had a horrible experience at UT that UT won't even talk about, right? Because it's so arrogant. And not Randy Boyd, but some of the staff people, they're just arrogant. It's like, no, we don't have to address these people. We don't work for them. And that gets to something we're going to talk about here in just a minute, I think. But there's a general across the board for state, not the state employee so much, the person that's out working on the road, but at a management level, and especially at an executive management level, there is not an accountability to people. Give you to segue into that. I'll close the one thought on the education. I would suspend the voucher. I would. And I'd put together a committee to research how that we shift the cost back to Nashville and allow the counties to keep their money, and what does the plan look like to start addressing the infrastructure and the maintenance needs across the state, and how long does that plan run? Is that a 10-year, 20-year, 25-year, 30-year? I don't know, but I think there are people in engineering firms that could help figure that out. And that'd be one of the first things I'd want to do, because I think that could be a game changer for the education system in Tennessee.
Okay.
So I had going to this next.
Number two.
I think we have Yeah, I think Tennesseans have a right to expect people in Nashville to understand that they work for them, work for the citizen. And that's not the case now. I'll give you an example, and then we'll get to the 2A rights and some of the stuff that you have there on your slides. But I got a call from a church trustee 2 weeks ago, I guess, 3 weeks ago. And he said, "Hey, Monty, we've DOT's working on the road down in South Roane County, and they've torn down all of our church signs at the intersection of Highway 58 and River Road and piled them up to be thrown away." And he sent me photographs. They're broke all to pieces, and I mean, just trashed. And these signs have been in place, some of them 20, 30, 40 years, right? And the couple business signs, the same thing happened to them. And so I called the department. I said, "Let me check into this." And I called and talked to the old boy with the Department of Transportation. And he called my church trustee back, which is a good thing because there's an accountability. But then he basically just told him, said, "Hey, it's on the right of way. We can do whatever we want to with them." And we really we took them down so that you could come and pick them up, which was, I'll just say it. I won't use that word that some of these soft men are using. That wasn't misinformation. That was a lie.
Yeah.
And they butchered these signs, and they didn't even tell anybody. And these signs had phone numbers on them because they want people to go to church there, right? And so we've written them a letter and asked for a couple things. But I got to tell you, that's unacceptable. Yeah. Every employee from the TBI to TDOT to TDEC, they work for the citizens of Tennessee.
Yep.
Now, that doesn't mean they don't have a responsibility to do, and it doesn't mean that the TDOT people can't say, "Hey, we've got to do this on this easement. This is dangerous," or on this part of the roadway. I get all that, but there's a way to do it and still act like you work for the people of Tennessee.
Yeah.
And we need to fix that. We need to fix that badly. I think we need a citizen customer liberty focused mindset. That's my words for it. And so it's going to take some leadership to make that culture change. We have a problem with it right now. But I'll start with the 2A rights. These scoundrels that come in and petition against your gun rights and unacceptable. No legislative directors under a Fritts administration because there's no constitutional authority to do that. It doesn't mean they'd be out of job, but it does mean that they might be the ones that are manning the phone lines to make sure that the citizens' complaints are understood. Because the way this works right now, that church trustee from Chapman Grove calls his state rep. Well, whose responsibility is it to upkeep the roads? It's not the state rep. It's the Department of Transportation. It's the state highway.
Right.
Well, we put a middleman in. I think we do that intentionally. I think we've done it intentionally for a couple reasons. I think career politicians want to feel important, and they want to act like they've done something. They really haven't done anything. They've just made a phone call. And two, I think that we've developed an executive department mindset. We don't work for these peasants. Well, let the General Assembly deal with that. Right. I really think that's the case. We need to fix that. 2A rights are absolute. 1A rights are absolute. I'm an absolutist on those things. If your Bill of Rights is not absolute, then you are just a peasant begging for privileges, because that's why our founders wrote that in. And these people, and some of them are attorneys, and I don't know where they went to law school and what they studied, but they've missed it. Every citizen has a right to pursue a career of their own choosing, a legal career. And we don't license prostitutes and drug dealers, right?
Right.
But barbers, butchers, and boilermakers are all licensed careers. And to say to one of them that you are non-essential based on your career choice is an immoral thing to do. And we just about had that through the House. We got it to the floor, and poor Andrew Farmer just started feeling bad and sent it back to committee. And I'm sure it'll fight in the in the Senate, I think that the governor's office set that up because they hated that bill. Last year, I ran it in the 113th General Assembly, and the words that the governor's office used was, if we pass Fritz's bill, we won't be able to control rioting.
Oh.
So I asked them, I said, when's the last time the butcher or the barbers and the beauticians rioted?
When's the last time we had control in Memphis?
Yeah. And then this year, the TEMA director on record said that we have to be able to declare people non-essential. I'm paraphrasing a little bit, to prevent looting. And I thought, what an insulting, arrogant, stupid thing to say. And so I popped off something at him in the committee and said, brother, you're the reason we need this law, people that think like you.
Absolutely.
Of course, then I had a couple of colleagues pull me to the side and tell me, oh, you were too mean to him.
You were too nice.
Yeah. I think we've all forgotten who we work for sometimes.
Absolutely.
I talked about the legislative directors remove that. Property ownership is a creator endowed right, and let's let them manage their property, not the government. That gets into everything from wetlands to,
conservation easements.
Conservation easements, yeah. I've said enough on that.
I want to hit real quick on 2A rights again, and I know where you stand because we've talked, but some of the people. So you say it's absolute, so that means we're going to have a real constitutional carry, or you would support real constitutional carry, and we would get rid of this whole insane intent to go armed law. We'd be able to have shotguns in our vehicles again, and just all the other garbage that, for instance, the stuff that the TFA has been working on for years to correct. We would see those things come to fruition. That's what your effort would be, right?
Oh yeah, I think, and some of it by executive order, brother. I will tell you, I think I'm not a big fan of executive order. Actually, I think executive orders that get into what I can and can't do often are unconstitutional. But I do think the governor would have the authority to say by executive order, we're no longer going to deny people carrying a firearm or another weapon to come into a state building or state property. I think that's an executive order. I think that as far as the executive branch enforcement, the intent to go armed is an unconstitutional concept. And I'm okay with taking that on. And I know that's going to make the attorneys that only read opinions of judges rather than the Constitution nervous, but shall not be infringed is crystal clear.
Right.
And then I think the bully pulpit of a 2A supporter, and so I do carry a pistol most places I go now, and I'm still going to carry a Smith, a Glock, or a Kimber or something rather than an AR or a shotgun most days, right?
Right.
But to say that I'm a felon because I've got a loaded shotgun in the back window of my pickup truck or a loaded AR-15 in the back window of my pickup truck or the back seat is an abhorrent thought. And that is an infringement. I will tell you, I think this stupid Glock switch bill that passed, I didn't vote for it this year, but I think that's an infringement. I don't have a Glock switch. I don't have any automatic weapons. But, you know what? I don't know. You get me started on that because it is the greatest litmus test for where a politician, how they feel about your rights. Because if they think that they can do the intent to go armed, if they think they can say, well, we're going to write this nebulous language of intent to go armed so that we can prosecute you for it under certain cases. If they think they can do that, then they think they can say to me, well, Monty, you can't say the word boo. You can't say the word yellow. You can't say the word baseball. And they can stop my speech. As a matter of fact, if they think they can say that I am intending to go armed and that's a crime, and they think that's okay, then they can say to me, they think, you can no longer attend a Methodist church. You have to go to a Baptist church. They do. It's the litmus test. And so I know, especially, some of these brain dead Democrats, not all of them are brain dead, but some of the brain dead Democrats, they're scared to death of the word gun. And, and we use this stupid phrase, and some of the Republicans, and I scold them for it every chance I get. They'll use that phrase, gun violence. It means nothing. It's like spoon fatness. It means nothing. And so we've allowed them to set up this narrative that all guns are bad and they just accidentally go off and kill people all the time, and laying on the shelf, they're dangerous. And that is not the case.
No, not at all.
And so when we allow a Republican to use the phrase gun violence unchecked, we're adding to the problem. As a matter of fact, I think I called Farmer out on that on the floor this year, because I think he used that. I think, as I recall, I did. Because it just bothers me that we would use, is it a Freudian slip that we really think that way, or have we been conditioned to think that way? I don't know. But it is indicative of where that politician thinks about your rights in general, Dave. And the Second Amendment is tremendously important. It is the securer of your rights. It is the acknowledgement that self-preservation in the face of tyranny or criminal aggression is a first law of nature. And it is a recognition of that. And I would take that further, that the tractor that I have sitting down in my barn behind my house, I keep it as a novelty now. My garden looks horrible. If I'm worried about my farming to live, I'm in trouble. But to many people, their tractor, their tiller, their rakes, their hoes, their chainsaws, those things are important for them to be able to make a living, right, keep their farm up, and feed themselves. And in Tennessee, in any state, but especially in Tennessee, it should not be criminal for me to go out with a club, a bat, a knife, a pistol, and make certain that thief does not take what I own. And we can't get to that concept. Many of these politicians, we've become such a generation of weak men. We're afraid to stand up. We're afraid to say no and mean it. And we take money from the wrong people.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
These little pseudo-communist groups like Mom Demand Action and Safer Tomorrows or Safer Todays or whatever it are, lots of good people in those groups, but they're completely taken advantage of because the folks that are at the head of those organizations hate America, and they hate folks that think like we do.
Absolutely.
It's that.
Too often GOP, and this is going to be the cleaned up version, too many of in the GOP, they're part of the gang of pansies. And it's disgusting. It's unbelievable that you see that kind of stuff going on in Tennessee. And number one is.
So there's some concepts that go behind that I'll kind of talk through. So the problem with an ever expanding budget is that we have to balance that budget in Tennessee, right? Now, unfortunately, in Tennessee, the problem is we just print more money and cause more inflation in DC.
Right.
But in Tennessee, we've got to balance that. So what that means is for every dollar we spend, we have to take one from Dave or Monty or from Susie. And every dollar that we take in revenue collection, taxes, fees, or whatever, is liberty lost by that person and by all Tennesseans. Because your liberty is directly tied to your wherewithal. Doesn't mean you can't be broke and still experience liberty. But what it does mean is that your finances increase your ability to speak and provide speech and to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, right?
Right.
And so we are collecting taxes and fees to support these big budgets that have things like $25 million farmland preservation legislation in them and $60 million 0% construction loans, which you've probably talked about. Those two things are battling one another, right?
Yeah.
With the same dollars. Mine and your dollars are wrestling to do we protect the farmland or do we build a new house on it?
Yeah.
And so I think that the average Tennessean has a right to expect more money to stay in their pocket.
Right.
And things are good in Tennessee, and that's part of the reason that many people are moving here, but they could be better.
Yeah.
And some of the first targets that I think we have to take on, I mentioned this early, 59% growth in 6 years. We went from Haslam's last budget in 2019 was $37.5 billion. And so I heard today through the grapevine that someone said that I was spreading misinformation about the budget issues.
Okay.
Well, okay. These are the numbers. Yeah. 37.5 to 59.5. We passed 59.8. That's a 59% growth. Yeah. And that is not misinformation, that every dollar that Nashville spends comes from the pocket of a Tennessean or from someone passing through Tennessee, right?
Yeah.
And so we're collecting those to be able to support these programs. The next governor of Tennessee should only submit a budget proposal that has necessary and critical functions of the state of Tennessee government in it. No programs, no special this, that, and the other, because what the governor's doing when he sends us a budget, and of course he's authored the legislation that goes along with it, but they're getting to do an omnibus of all the things he wants to accomplish. That budget proposal that comes from the governor's shop should only be to execute the laws on the books and to support the functions of those that he supervises, period.
Right.
Then, if someone from House District 32 or House District 99 decides that they want to put in a program to provide free Dr. Pepper cans to all Tennesseans, let that go through the deliberative process in the House and the Senate, and then send that to the governor so that he can either sign it into law, let it lay for 10 days, not counting Sundays, or veto it.
Right.
But we've allowed that to happen, and we talked a little bit about what I think we may be doing with schools. That may be a necessary function that we're not funding. Right. The maintenance, support, and eligibility standards to fully fund, not partially, fully fund. It may be something we're missing, but we still send $13 million to the Commission for the Arts, $2.7 million for salaries and 10 point something million, the remainder to be able to incentivize and to provide programmatic scope.
Yeah, and of course, in recent past, we've funded Ford, the blue opal plant for Ford, which that's not the role of government, and money to Titan Stadium, that kind of garbage. That's ridiculous.
It is. So I think we have a spending problem in Tennessee. And I know that makes my peers uncomfortable when I say that, because it's counter to the narrative. Because here's the narrative. We fulfilled our constitutional obligation and we passed a balanced $59.8 billion budget. That's it. That's what they'll say. And we did all these good things with the money.
But a lot of the things they do are unconstitutional in other parts of other parts of the Constitution they're violating. So they fulfill their constitutional duty to pass a balanced budget, but they don't have a problem violating other provisions of the Constitution.
So again, I'm dead set on this. I think we've got to get the budget. That's the number one issue. Taxation is the first and most effective form of bondage. And as long as we continue to extract dollars out of Tennessee wallets and spend them on things that are other than government functions, it is an immoral thing to do. It's not just unconstitutional. It's an immoral thing to do, because you're taking money out of the pocket of a 90-year-old who lives in a single wide trailer in Loudoun County, and you're taking some portion of that dollar and sending it to Ford Motor Company or to the Commission for the Arts. Yep. Immoral. Or you're providing a 0% loan, construction loan, for someone that the bureaucracy in Nashville has said, I'll pick you. That's not the way this is supposed to work. We should do things with the idea, the intent that all Tennesseans will benefit from it. Roads,
Yeah.
energy, water. Those are things that all Tennesseans are going to benefit from. Now, the issue with the Duck River is a Middle Tennessee issue, but water is a collective problem for the entire state of Tennessee. So it's not just a geographic concern with the water. It is a health of the state.
Right.
And that's much different than recruiting industry. And so some of the industry that we have that are coming in, I'm happy to have. My district's got a big investment coming. I relatively, as far as tax dollars and payments in lieu of taxes and all that kind of stuff, probably a lower figure. But a $6 billion investment by Orano to enrich uranium in Oak Ridge, in Roane County section of Oak Ridge. All Tennesseans, all Americans are going to benefit from that. That's a super important thing, but we shouldn't fund the entirety of that.
No, absolutely not.
And I think, and I'm going to speak perhaps a bit out of turn here and presume something, but because of TVA's debt structure, and because of the fact that we are importing 1 out of 4 kilowatts right now in the state of Tennessee, and because we made some really stupid decisions in D.C. that filtered down to TVA, and oh, by the way, our governor and our leadership in Nashville didn't pursue this. When we shut down a Bull Run steam plant, which produced 4.3% of the electrical generating capacity for the entire state of Tennessee, and we shut it down without replacing the capacity, and we were quiet as little church mice in leadership positions in Nashville from the governor's office, shameful. But I think TVA is in a position to want some help. I think there's a way that all Tennesseans benefit from putting more kilowatts into the grid. Because if we don't have enough in and we continue to buy off the market economy, you're going to continue to see rate changes in the cost of your residential and commercial electricity, I think.
And as much as we're growing, that could get ugly real quick.
Yep.
Well, Monty, thank you for being with us. Thank you for spending the time. I really enjoyed hearing what you had to say. Do you have any closing thoughts?
Just that I appreciate the folks that have decided for certain that they want to run. Public service is a sacrifice. I don't know why anybody would want to do these jobs. I really don't, because you lose control of your schedule. You lose control of your ability to spend time with grandkids and kids and go hunt and shoot that 45, 70 more and all kinds of things. But I am praying about this, and it humbles me to even have this conversation, to be honest with you. Dumb country boy from Roane County, and it's not an arrogance or a confidence thing that I offer this to you. I have thought through it. I've been thinking through this for some time as to what I think are the priorities, and there's a whole list of other things that we can talk through that I think that need to be areas of focus and points of focus, and in the next administration. And I hope that these would be things that we would talk about. I hope that that the citizens across the state will get engaged.
Are there some other key things you'd like to mention real quick, or anything pop in your mind?
Well, I'll stop with this. God's blessed us financially pretty well, my wife and I, and so you can do things like this. It's so expensive. A really bright young 30-year-old would have a hard time getting into politics at a state level, right? I mean, some do, but those that are have traditional jobs, it's not an option, right? and raising a family, it'd be tough. So you end up having either old people like me, or you have people that mom and daddy or somebody's handed them down money, and sometimes
Right.
they're not the best stewards of any responsibility.
Yeah.
And it's such an expensive thing, that you will have people that would gladly spend $1 million to become a state rep, or $10 million to become a governor. When I have folks that live in my county that can't imagine what $10 million looks like or what it could do, Dave. I think those are sad things. And he was my friend, and we become friends in a short time. Frank Nicely.
Yep.
He and I were in Sevier County last July of 24, and he told me, he had that gruff voice, Fritts. He said, we have turned the governor's election into a lottery for who can raise the most money.
Yep.
And we chatted back and forth about that for a minute. And that is disappointing and reducing of confidence for the average Tennessean, I think. President Trump is a unique example. He's the unicorn of someone who's very, very wealthy and can still communicate with the average person. Most of these people that have grown up with a silver spoon in their mouth, or they've become extremely wealthy, they don't even like average people, and they don't appear to. And that's problematic, because I think that if we lose the confidence of the average Tennessean that Nashville is working on their behalf and for their interest, things devolve quickly. And I got to tell you, I know that we hear in certain circles and certain elite, political class cultures that everybody's happy with things that have taken place in the last 6 years. I got to tell you, that's not the case. The average working Tennessean, not where I live.
Nope.
And I think it's an important thing to elect an average person to the office. I think it's been a long time since we've done that. And I think I'm hoping that an average person will come along, and that's no slight toward the people that have announced it, but I don't know that a lot of people I know are really excited about a 30-year career politician, and I don't know that they wouldn't prefer somebody they think that they can communicate with. Maybe that's John, maybe it's Miss Marsha, I don't know. But
or maybe it's Monty.
I think I probably bring some things that neither one of them do. Yeah. I think I bring some things that neither one of them do, and that straightforward willingness to go in and do a little bit of Donald J. Trump house cleaning is important. Yeah. And last thing I'll say is this. I'm probably talking too much about this, but we have this almost zombie-like desire to go endorse somebody for something. I'm the only person I can endorse, and some days I can't even endorse me, Dave.
Yeah, I have been disappointed by some of the people that have endorsed Marsha.
Well, I guess here's what bothers me the most about it. Endorsement from one candidate to another is usually a career politician who is out of touch with most of the people they work for, saying to the people they work for, you should trust me and just vote for this person. And that's an unfortunate part of this. I think if I were to do this, the only endorsement I'm looking for is that little 80-year-old grandmother that wants somebody that she honestly thinks will pray about things before they make big decisions. Or that 25-year-old that's gotten out of the service and he likes the fact that there's finally a veteran running.
Yeah, we haven't had that.
I might, as an enlisted guy who'd been in the Guard and done a deployment and done this, that, and the other, that I might understand some of the struggles he's going through, because, Dave, that budget, while it's went up 59% in the last 6 years, if you look at what's happened to our state veteran services budget, it's gone down.
Wow.
And
That's sad.
I think we can do, yeah. And we're happy to keep sending them all over the world, not just our active duty and regular troops, but the guardsmen. And it becomes all about that game of how many new pieces of equipment we can have, and, the economic impact. And then it's the rare time that I hear one of them say something about the cost to the family or to the soldier. And I think there's probably a good number of folks that would appreciate having somebody that understands that.
Absolutely. Well, hey, I want to thank you for being with us. I hope to have you back soon. I hope you get in. I can tell you this, if you're in, I'm all in with you. For what that's worth, you'll definitely have my support. I know a lot of other people to support you. I think you're what we need, and I hope you come to that decision. I hope you come to it soon. If you don't, I know that whatever you do, you'll still be working hard for the people. And if you do, we'd love to have you come back and announce it officially here. That'd be great. But either way, I'm all in. I'm all in if you get in. I'll just put it that way.
Well, thank you, Dave. I appreciate the time tonight.
Absolutely, and glad to do it. I want to thank everybody for taking the time to watch our program tonight. Please be sure to hit the like and subscribe buttons, as well as the notification bell, so you never miss an episode. We appreciate your support. Thanks again to Jonathan and Mary for their financial support for the month of July and August. We really appreciate it. It goes a long way towards keeping this program on the air. It doesn't cost anything to subscribe, so please subscribe. And listen and share it with your friends. Check out our audio podcasts on iHeartRadio, Spotify, and other platforms as well. Sign up for our weekly newsletter at our website, teeninformer.com. Find and follow us on Facebook and X. Look for Dave's Rays, which are 2-minute audio commentaries on current events. We put one out over the weekend, so if you haven't seen it, you'll want to check it out. On August 19th, the Lawrence County GOP will have its Reagan Day dinner. The speakers are Representative Scott DeJarlais, Representative John Rose, and Senator Marsha Blackburn. There will be a cocktail reception at 4:30 p.m., dinner at 6, and opening ceremony at 6 p.m. Individual tickets are $100. To purchase tickets and for location details, contact Lawrence Sutton at 863-614-7500. The Tennessee Firearms Association will have its yearly fundraiser Saturday, September 6th, beginning at 9 a.m. at the Farm Bureau Expo Center, the James E. Ward Agricultural Center at 945 East Batter Parkway, Lebanon, Tennessee. The guest speaker is General Michael Flynn. Representative Rose will be there as well. There's going to be vendors galore, auctions, plus lunch. It's a great event. I hope to see you there. If you've never been, you really, really need to go. If you haven't met Richard Archie, you haven't met John Harris, they'll be there as well. Come on out. It's a great event. No promise of tickets if you wait till the day of. So go to tfalac.org for tickets and get yours now. All right, let's see. Okay, on the 14th of August, that's this Thursday, former Chief of Police Billy Phillips of Galloway, Tennessee, will be here for part 2 of an episode we did in June titled Small Town Justice or Political Persecution. Apparently, a key member of the U.S. Senate Judiciary Committee Investigative Council has seen the video. They've actually reached out to him prior to seeing it, so this could get interesting. Our guest next Monday, the 18th, will be State Rep and now 7th District candidate Jody Barrett from Dixon County, who has made a name for himself in the state legislature for representing his constituents and refusing to bow to the so-called leadership in the State House. Don't forget our guest for tonight, or who was scheduled for tonight, Vanessa Miller, has been moved to Monday, September 8th at 7 p.m. Hope you'll join us. That's it for now. Good night from Paris, Tennessee, that is.